So just as a little extension for the exercise 1 part that we've just made, we've left it just as a grey modelling material, but that generally doesn't look that exciting. So there's a couple of ways we can change the material properties. The two little drop down boxes at the top where it says generic and default. Within this menu I've actually got some built-in materials that Inventor has within its library. Now there's lots more that we can actually get from Autodesk, but we'd have to install another material library, which we don't have the facility to do, so we're just going to have to make do with the ones that are in this list at the moment. So I'm just going to go and pick a I don't know, let's just go for copper. Okay, so when I select that, that changes the entire material that I've modelled with into copper itself, and sometimes there's a couple more changes we can make to the copper in this right hand menu. So you can see in this one I've got copper polish and I've got copper satin, which it's currently in. I know if I click the copper polished, I might just get a little bit more detail. I might get some reflection around these curved areas, but the flat sides generally don't look any different to the copper satin colour. Now what I can also actually do is, if I click on an actual face itself and then I right click, I can actually go to properties, and rather than it being the actual material colour now, I can actually change the appearance of that face. So let's say, for example, I know that in production of this part, this top surface was going to be painted black. Again, I can just scroll down and click on the black window, and when I press OK, it would colour just that surface black. So just like the change here, that changed all of the material into copper, but just by right clicking and going to the properties, I actually can just change a face appearance colour. Now obviously that was just a little test to show you, and I don't want it to be black really, so I'll just go back and I can change this one to the as body function, and that'll just go back to my copper selection that I made previously. Now one thing I didn't show you in that first section is the sort of rendering that we can do on some of these shapes. Now I have to be a little bit careful in the Academy because Inventor is installed on the network. It actually takes a lot of processing power running forward and backward to the server. So for this next stage we might just have to be a little bit careful with the settings that we make. But what I can actually do with Inventor is, if I go to the View menu just above my toolbar, I can actually change firstly a lot of the visual styles that I can have. So at the minute by default we've got the shaded with edges. I could just change it into shaded and I'd lose the sort of black marks around the edge of my shape. So if you just watch very, very closely, I actually just get quite a prominent edge, which obviously in reality it wouldn't have. So if I wanted it to look a little bit more realistic, I could just do it to shaded. Now you'll see right at the top there's actually one called realistic, which is generally the one that I use when I try and render anything to make it look like the material that I've actually chosen. But there's a few more down here that you may have seen the likes of before. So if we look at this wireframe model, again, I know in some games, and if you watch programs with architecture and stuff like that, you may have seen a wireframe model before, which shows us obviously lots of hidden detail, which a shaded model wouldn't do. So we couldn't see what was on the other side of this. There could actually technically be some holes in this back face round here projected into this shape, which we don't actually see when it is in a shaded amount. And there's some sort of less desirable ones from an engineering point of view, where we could pretend it's been hand painted in watercolour. But if we were doing some designs or initial designs that we were showing a customer or a client, it just gives a different way of showing the part that you've made, or it changes its visual style a little bit. So just for the purpose of this little video, we'll just go back to realistic, and that'll give me back my polished copper part. It's not got the black edge running around it, so it generally looks quite realistic in nature. Now what I can actually do is I can actually put shadows onto this. So again, generally, if I just click on the button here, it'll just put all the shadows on, so it'll just add a bit of darker areas inside where there's a little bit that's a little bit deeper, for example. And obviously this component is only 6mm thick in total, so they're not going to be a great amount of shadow knocking around on this shape. What I can also do is then put reflections on, and when that loads up, it doesn't actually look like it does a lot, but if I scroll around, you might see that it will actually put some reflections into my work. Because what we're telling Inventor to do here is to put our shape, imagine some light shining at it, and it looks at how the light would affect, and it would darken areas where the shadows are, and it would reflect light on certain areas. Now, depending on the materials you pick, textures is always on by default, and I would always generally leave that on. So if you've got a material like the brick material or the checker plate, etc., it just gives you a little bit more detail in the textures on the shape itself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put something on called ray tracing. So it'll look at all the elements of light that are hitting our shape and generally gives us a bit more of a photorealistic view of our shape. Now, I'm running quite a high spec laptop here, but this at times will crash my laptop, so I always make sure that I'm only on low, generally most of the time. So this has now taken 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It's going to take about 20 seconds by the time it's finished. It has, look, yep, 20 seconds exactly. But what I've got there is quite a realistic render, so I can see that I've definitely got shadow in this section here. This edge is a lot darker where the light's not hitting it. And for a finished component, it can look really, really nice to add this in with your engineering drawing when we get to that stage, so that you can actually show the customer exactly what something would look like. Now, depending on the material, the ray tracing does take a lot longer. I know I've had some of these running which have taken upwards of 1,000 seconds to do. So the laptops using, they're not going to be of the greatest specification. So we just need to be really, really careful if we try anything over the low functionality. Now, one thing I will say is if you start rotating round your view at this stage, okay, your computer will start to lag, because actually what it's doing, it's still got ray tracing enabled. So as soon as I plop this down, it will again start ray tracing straight away. And we know in this case, my last one only took 20 seconds. The light might be affecting this shape a lot differently, so this could actually take, it might be quicker, it might take a little bit longer than 20 seconds on this occasion. But what I would advise you do, I think it's going to, yeah, it's only taken 17 seconds this time. What I'd advise you to do is, if you're going to change the view or you're going to zoom in a little bit, it would be always just to turn off ray tracing just to begin with. It'll just disable it, and then if I want to zoom in and I want to rotate my view, it just allows it a little bit of an easier time. It's not going to kind of lag out as much as it did last time, and when I get it into the position that I think, yeah, actually that's definitely my finished position, that's where I want to run the ray tracing, that's when I can just select the tool again and enable that to do it again. So it looks at all that lighting, looks at the material, thinks where the light would be affecting it, etc., etc. as we go. And now that I've put this down, this one doesn't clearly look like the best position to do. I've got some very heavily dark areas down here and here, and I'm actually losing a lot of the shape. So just because I've zoomed in a little bit more, as I said, the light's affecting it different. So I'm talking 28 seconds. It's probably just going to be just over 30 seconds by the time this one finishes. But again, depending on the settings you make, and the one where it was over 1,000 seconds, I definitely had that on high, because I do remember the object that I was doing. But clearly that wasn't the best view to have it in, and that's, I suppose, the benefit of keeping it in low. If you do make a mistake, it's a quick untick of ray tracing to zoom back to where I need it to be. So you might want to zoom out a little bit. I can rotate my shape around before I apply my ray tracing again. So if you do get to the end of a finished part, rather than just leaving it as the grey material based on the object that we did. And if you remember, this one was exercise 1. It actually just makes it a little bit nicer. So you could print your drawing out, put it in your portfolio folder, but you could also print out a nice rendered view of that object as well, and it just adds that little bit more to your work. So again, depending on the material, depending on how much light's affecting it, whether you've got shadows and reflections added, whether you've got textures on, ray tracing can take a little bit, but I think it's definitely worth doing it because it gives you that realistic visual experience of what the part would like based on the material that you have selected. So if you get to the end of the parts, why not give it a go? It doesn't take too many minutes. This video has only been on for just under 11 minutes now, so I think within the lessons you'll probably manage to get the time to do it. And you never know, you could experiment. If not everyone's doing it at once, maybe looking at a high quality ray tracing might be doable within the lesson. Okay, see you soon.